The game had rules, lines drawn in the sand, and sides that never crossed. Until you. What began as whispers of your rise soon turned into roars of your dominance. You moved like a shadow, striking with precision, leaving chaos in your wake. Those who once stood against you now scramble to stand beside you, their loyalty shifting like the tide. The non-believers, the ones who scoffed at your name, now chant it in awe, their doubt shattered by the trail of victories you've carved. Into the battlefield. You weren't just in the game anymore. You were the game, the most deadly being to ever play, and the world had no choice but to bow. Power isn't just strength, it's perception. They don't see you as a competitor anymore. They see you as an inevitability, a storm on the horizon, a force that bends reality itself. Fear does the work before you even lift a finger. They hesitate, second-guess, make mistakes before the battle even begins. You don't have to strike first. Their own minds do it for you. Doubt spreads like a virus. One missed step, one shaky hand. It infects them, corrodes their confidence. The moment they start fearing you, they've already lost. Some try to fight it, convince themselves you're just another player, that the legend is bigger than the truth. They tell themselves you can bleed, that you can fall. Then they meet you. That's when it happens, the shift. The moment they see what you are, not just a threat, but something beyond prediction, beyond control. The ones who came in with fire leave with nothing but silence. Unpredictability is your weapon. You don't follow patterns. You don't play by their rules. They prepare for the player they think you are, only to face something they never saw coming. That's what breaks them. Because fear isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It lingers in the silence before the strike, in the split second where they realize they have no answer. It eats away at them, turning them into their own worst enemy. And the worst part, they know it's coming, they just don't know when. Loyalty is fragile. It bends, it breaks, it shifts when the weight of power leans too hard in one direction. Your enemies knew where they stood. They had convictions, alliances, reasons to fight against you, until they didn't. Fear makes them hesitate. Logic makes them reconsider. Survival makes them move. At first, they resisted, swore they would never yield, clung to their banners, their causes, their pride. But reality doesn't care about pride. Reality only respects power. One by one, they started to fold. Some did it in silence, hoping no one would notice their shift. Others made a spectacle of it, renouncing their old loyalties in public displays of surrender. Either way, the result was the same. They stood against you. Then they stood beside you. Not out of love, not out of trust, but because standing anywhere else meant being swallowed whole. There was one, in particular, a rival who built their name on opposing you. They spoke your name with disdain, called you reckless, arrogant, doomed to fall. They believed it, or at least they did, until they saw what you really were. The moment came when they had a choice, fight you or join you. They hesitated. That was all it took. Hesitation is a crack in the foundation, doubt creeping in, weakening the walls. They realized they weren't just fighting a player, they were fighting a force. So they did what all smart survivors do. They switched sides. Self-preservation, maybe. Respect, definitely. But deeper than that, understanding. The moment they surrendered wasn't a loss. It was clarity. The realization that they had spent their energy fighting the inevitable. The truth hits harder than any weapon. When enough of them cross the line, the war stops being a war. It becomes a march, a movement, a tide that swallows everything in its path. Your enemies become your army. Your opposition becomes your foundation. The ones who swore they would never kneel now stand at your side, not because you forced them to, but because they chose to. Not all will admit why. Some will claim it was strategy, a calculated move. But in the silence, when no one is watching, they know. They weren't conquered. They were convinced. Some people never learn. They mock. They doubt. They swear up and down that you will never rise. You hear their voices in the crowd, laughing at the idea of your success, calling you overhyped, a fluke, a temporary storm that will pass. But storms don't pass when they own the sky. At first, they ignore you. It's easier that way. A name, dismissed, is a name that holds no power. But power doesn't need permission. It forces itself into the conversation. Your victories pile up, one, then another, small at first, then undeniable. They watch, waiting for your streak to end. It doesn't. They start to shift. The laughter turns uneasy. They pick apart your wins, searching for weakness, a flaw, a reason to believe you aren't what they fear you are. Nothing. Then comes the moment, the breaking point, the day they are forced to face you directly. You see it in their eyes, the way their confidence wavers, the way their movements lose their sharpness. Doubt has already taken root. They fight like someone trying to prove a point, but the truth isn't up for debate. The first hit lands, then the next. Their world shrinks with every second, reality setting in. You were never a fluke, never an accident. You were the thing they refused to believe in, until belief wasn't a choice anymore. It's over before they even understand what happened. The ones who mocked you now fall silent, their words replaced by something new. Respect. It burns their pride to admit it, but it's there, in the way they look at you, in the way they speak your name without the mockery. They don't have to say it out loud. You already know. They believe. The game had a rhythm, a structure, a balance that kept everything in check. Then you arrived. At first, they tried to play you like everyone else. Run the same plays, follow the same rules. They thought experience would be enough, that what worked before would work again. It didn't. You weren't following their script. You weren't reacting the way they expected. Their strategies crumbled, one by one. Some adapted, most didn't. The ones who didn't paid the price. You weren't just a competitor, you were a disruption, a force that rewrote the rules with every move you made. Old tactics became useless, predictability became death. They had to evolve or be erased. Some tried to hold on to the past, to force the old ways to work. They clung to their habits, convinced they could outlast the change. They fell first. The game itself started shifting. The smart ones stopped trying to beat you at the old game. They started studying yours, watching your moves, learning your methods, trying to survive. But studying isn't the same as mastering. They could copy, but they couldn't create. They were always a step behind. Because while they were trying to understand your strategy, you were already building the next one. Every move you made forced them to adjust. Every victory pushed the game further into your hands. Before, you were just another player, a name in the mix. Now, the game revolves around you. The way they train, the way they plan, the way they think, it all bends to your influence. You don't just play by the rules, you make them. Drop a comment. I don't play the game, I decide how it's played. If you know the rules bend to those who break them. They love a story, a prophecy, a legend written before it ever begins. They want to believe power is handed down. That fate decides that some are chosen. You weren't. No divine force marked your path. No destiny carved your name in stone. No higher power whispered your victory. You chose yourself. While others waited for a sign, you moved. While they searched for purpose, you created yours. Every step, every sacrifice, every ruthless decision, it was yours alone. They called you reckless, said you were forcing something that wasn't meant to be. But meaning is a cage for the weak. Purpose is built, not given. The chosen ones sat in their thrones, waiting for the world to recognize them. They expected the crown to be placed on their heads. You didn't wait. You took it. That's what makes you dangerous. You weren't handed power, you earned it. You weren't born with an advantage, you made one. They still don't understand. They look for the secret, the shortcut, the hidden prophecy that explains why you exist. There isn't one. Your power isn't written in the stars. It's carved into the battlefield, into the scars of every war you've survived. Fate is an excuse, a story told by those too afraid to take control. You are not the chosen one, you are the one who chose, and that makes you unstoppable. What makes you dangerous? It's not just strength, not just speed, not just intelligence. It's something deeper. Something they can't quantify. Instinct, precision, patience. Others rely on brute force. You don't need to. Power isn't just about hitting harder, it's about knowing exactly when to strike. Most act on impulse. They react. They swing wildly, hoping to land a shot. You wait. You watch. You calculate. Every move has purpose. Every action has weight. That's what sets you apart. Not just the ability to fight, but the ability to control the fight before it even begins. They mistake your silence for hesitation. They think the lack of movement means a lack of intent. They're wrong. You don't move because you don't have to. Not yet. Then, in a blink, it happens. A shift, a strike, a moment where everything aligns. You don't waste energy. You don't second guess. You see the opening and you take it. They never see it coming. That's the difference. Others rely on chaos. You create inevitability. They call it talent, luck, a gift. It's not. It's mastery. Mastery built through pain, through failure, through relentless, brutal refinement. They try to study it, to replicate it, but you can't copy something you don't understand. Your deadliness isn't just in what you do, it's in what you know. The game, the battlefield, the mind of your opponent. You don't just play, you dictate, you manipulate, you control. That's why they fear you, because you aren't just a threat. You are a certainty. And now, let's take a moment to salute the ones who were never meant to fit in, because they were born to stand out. Here's to the chosen ones, the silent forces, the watchers in the dark, always aware, always steps ahead, moving differently, thinking beyond, seeing what others refuse to acknowledge. They don't walk the easy road. They forge their own. They battle forces unseen, breaking illusions, rewriting fate itself. It's a path few dare to tread, and that's exactly why they do it. No masks, no pretense, just raw, unshakable truth. That's the Obsidian Inner Order, a sanctuary for those who know they were never meant to follow. Over 450 invincible chosen ones, not bound by rules, but by purpose. A brotherhood and sisterhood of cosmic disruptors, truth-seekers, and divine warriors. If you feel it in your bones, you already know where to find us. Links in the description. If not, that's fine. We'll still be here, watching, guiding, shifting reality itself. This is for the ones who don't need recognition, who don't ask for permission, who simply are. Here's to you. Your rise wasn't just yours. It sent shockwaves. At first, they thought it was contained, that your victories were isolated, that your influence stopped at the edge of the battlefield. They were wrong. Power spreads. It moves through whispers, through actions, through undeniable proof. The ones closest to you felt it first. They adjusted, adapted, changed the way they moved. Then the ones beyond them started shifting too. A chain reaction, one domino falling into the next. Enemies turned cautious, rivals turned hesitant, allies turned sharper. Even the ones who never met you felt it. They had to. The game itself was shifting under your weight. Hierarchies cracked, old leaders scrambled to hold their thrones. Their strategies, once unbeatable, suddenly obsolete. They watched you, studied you, tried to understand what made you different. They copied what they could, changed what they had to, because if they didn't, they would be left behind. Wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about relevance. Your presence forced evolution, forced adaptation, forced them to rethink everything they once believed about power. Some hated it, resisted, clung to the past with bleeding hands. They were the first to fall. The smart ones didn't fight the current. They let it carry them, reshaping themselves in its image. Because when the landscape shifts, only fools stand still. You didn't just win, you didn't just dominate. You changed the game for everyone. Some will never admit it. They'll pretend they were always moving in this direction, that their transformation was their own choice. But the truth is simple. They changed because of you. They used to mock you, called your methods reckless, said your approach was flawed. Then they started losing. One by one they fell. Their confidence shattered, their strategies exposed, their pride turned to dust beneath your feet. So they did what all desperate people do. They studied you. At first, it was subtle, small changes, a shift in their footwork, a new way of thinking. They copied your timing, your patience, your precision. They told themselves it was strategy, that they were adapting, evolving, learning from the battlefield. But the truth was simpler. They weren't just adjusting, they were imitating. Every move they once ridiculed became a lesson. Every decision they once mocked became a blueprint. You watched it happen. The way their arrogance turned into quiet observation, the way their insults faded into silence. They thought you wouldn't notice, that they could steal your techniques without consequence. But power doesn't work that way. A copy is never the original. A reflection is never the real thing. They could mimic your steps, but they couldn't mimic your mind. They could study your actions, but they couldn't replicate your instinct. Because they weren't built like you. They didn't go through the fire, didn't bleed for every inch of progress, didn't carve their skill from the bones of their own failures. They wanted the results without the suffering, the mastery without the sacrifice. That's why they would always be behind. You didn't just learn the game, you rewrote it. Every move, every strategy, every unpredictable shift was yours before it ever belonged to them. They were chasing a shadow, trying to keep up with something they would never fully understand. Some of them thought imitation would make them equal, that if they studied hard enough, practiced long enough, they could match you. They were wrong, because power isn't in the mimicry, it's in the mastery. They see your victories and try to reverse engineer them, but they don't see the failures that came first, the mistakes that sharpened you, the losses that taught you where to strike and when to wait. They see the result. They don't see the process. That's why they will always be one step behind. They tried to become you, but in the end, all they became was a reminder, a reflection of something greater, a mirror that could never cast its own light. They all wanted the throne, until they saw what it cost. Everyone fights to reach the top. Few understand what happens when they get there. At first, it feels like victory, the roar of the crowd, the silence of the doubters, the weight of every battle behind you. But then the silence lingers, because no one is left. No equal, no rival, no challenge that makes your pulse quicken. You are alone at the summit. The ones below still fight, but not against you. They fight to be you, to take your place, to prove they are stronger, faster, better. You are no longer chasing, you are being chased. Every move is analyzed, every decision dissected, every weakness hunted. They don't just want to win, they want to destroy what you built. You carry the weight of being the standard, the measure by which all others are judged. It is not a gift, it is not a prize, it is a burden. They expect perfection. One mistake and the whispers start. One loss and the vultures circle. They don't care how many times you won before. They only care about the moment you fall, because the world doesn't love kings. It loves watching them burn. You have two choices, adapt or collapse. Some break under the pressure. They hesitate, they doubt, they let the weight crush them. You don't. You understand the truth. Staying at the top is harder than getting there. Dominance is not a moment. It is a war that never ends. The higher you climb, the thinner the air, the lonelier the road. But you didn't come this far to stop. They will try, they will scheme, plot, and pray for your downfall. Let them. Because the weight that crushes others, it only makes you stronger. They tell stories about you. Some call you unstoppable, untouchable, more force than human, a legend carved into the battlefield itself. Others call you lucky, a product of timing, a fluke waiting to be exposed. Both are wrong. The truth is sharper, simpler, more brutal. You weren't born for this. You weren't chosen. No prophecy carved your name into history. You did that yourself. Every scar tells the real story. Every loss, every failure, every moment when you could have quit but didn't. They don't want to hear that. They want a myth, something grand, something that makes your rise seem inevitable, something that makes their own failures feel smaller. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The truth is that you weren't stronger than them at the start. You weren't smarter. You weren't faster. You were just relentless. You pushed when they stopped, kept moving when they stood still, worked while they rested. They don't want to believe that, because if they do, it means their place in the game isn't about fate, it's about choice, their choice. That's the real fear, not that you're special, not that you were destined to win, but that you simply refused to lose. They look at your victories and call it effortless. They don't see the hours, the repetition, the pain. They don't see the nights spent sharpening your edge while they slept. They see the mountain. They don't see the climb. So they tell themselves a different story, that you were given something they weren't, that it was easier for you, that you didn't have to suffer. Lies. You suffered more, worked harder, took the hits, the losses, the failures, and kept going. That's why you stand where they don't. But myths are easier to believe than reality. Myths make your success something unreachable, something out of their hands. Reality makes it a choice, and that terrifies them. Because if it was a choice, then they could have chosen it too. But they didn't. You did. And that's why the legend will always be smaller than the truth. What happens when there's no one left to challenge? When every rival has fallen? When every enemy has surrendered? When even your name is enough to make them hesitate? This is the final stage, the peak, the point where victory is no longer a question, but an expectation. But expectations come with a price. Legends don't rest, kings don't sleep. The weight of power doesn't disappear once you hold it. It grows heavier. You reshaped the game, broke the old rules, forced a new order into existence. But order invites rebellion. They will come. The ones who dream of replacing you. The ones who whisper that your time is ending, that the throne is waiting for a new ruler. They will study you, copy you, try to turn your own lessons against you. Let them try. They don't understand what it took to reach this place. They weren't there when you bled for every inch, when you fought wars no one saw, when you built yourself from the ground up with nothing but willpower and pain. They think power is about taking, but real power is about keeping. Holding the throne when the world is desperate to take it back. Many have ruled for a day, few have ruled for a lifetime. That is your challenge now, not just to win, but to endure. Because legacy isn't built in a single moment, it's built over time, layer by layer, battle by battle. Your name is already carved into history, but what comes next? Will they remember you as a king, a tyrant, a god, or something beyond classification? The deadliest don't just leave a mark, they leave a void, a space so vast, so untouchable that no one dares to fill it. They don't just remember you, they feel your absence. The game will never be the same again, not because you played it, because you became it.